Ancient Egypt was not the eternal, unshakable land that legends make it out to be. For thousands of years, it existed under constant threat, from deserts, rivers, and foreign powers alike. The Nile gave life, but it also brought invaders. The desert offered protection, but it also harbored enemies waiting for opportunity. Egypt's history is a story of survival, of rulers who built walls, raised armies, and prayed to gods to hold chaos at bay. The earliest threats came from the south. Kushites, Nubians, and other nomadic tribes moved along the Nile, testing Egypt's boundaries. They sought land, cattle, tribute, anything to survive in the harsh African landscape. Egyptian pharaohs responded with force. Military campaigns pushed the borders farther, built fortresses, and established garrisons. Yet the south was not the only danger. To the east lay the Sinai, and beyond it, the deserts connecting Egypt to Asia. Canaanites, Amorites, and Hyksos tribes crossed these deserts to raid, trade, or conquer. The Hyksos in particular would one day shake Egypt to its foundations. These invaders brought new weapons: chariots, bronze swords, composite bows. Egyptians, slow to adapt, were forced to learn quickly or perish. And it wasn't just humans who threatened Egypt. Plagues, famine, and flooding could devastate the land as completely as any army. A bad harvest weakened armies, incited rebellion, and left Egypt vulnerable to invasion. Egyptian records often describe enemies in terms of chaos and evil. Foreigners were desert snakes or lion devourers, embodiments of disorder. This was not exaggeration. Egyptians believed that threatening forces were extensions of the cosmic imbalance. To fight them was to restore Ma'at, the divine order. Pharaohs were expected to embody this order. Failure to repel threats was considered divine disfavor. The Hyksos invasion during the Second Intermediate Period was a turning point.
They conquered northern Egypt, ruling for over a century. Their dominance forced Egyptians to innovate: chariots, new weapons, and reorganized armies. To repel such invaders, the Egyptians learned lessons that would shape their military for centuries. Threats also came from the Mediterranean. Sea raiders, pirates, and later the mighty Hittites and Libyans pressed on Egypt's borders. Some of these enemies could be placated with tribute. Others required total annihilation. Egyptians mastered diplomacy as a tool of survival. But it was always backed by the sword. Even within Egypt, threats existed. Internal rebellion, noble factions, and rival claimants to the throne often provoked civil war. A kingdom divided was a kingdom weakened, and weakened Egypt invited foreign conquest. Religion was central to perceiving these dangers. Priests interpreted the movement of stars, omens, and dreams to warn of coming invasions. They urged pharaohs to consult the gods, perform rituals, and offer sacrifices to avert disasters. In many ways, ancient Egypt fought wars long before the armies marched. They fought in the minds of kings, in the prayers of priests, and in the hearts of their people. Yet for all the preparation, the most dangerous threats were always unpredictable. A sudden invasion, a rebellion in the south, a plague that killed the crops, or a rival kingdom rising to power in the east. Every century brought a new danger. Every ruler faced enemies unseen by predecessors. Egypt's borders were lines in the sand, constantly challenged, constantly shifting. And as the empire expanded, the threats multiplied. Egypt became a target not just for neighboring tribes, but for distant civilizations seeking power, resources, and prestige. Pharaohs responded with monumental architecture, standing armies, and terrifying displays of force. But behind the grandeur lay a civilization living in perpetual tension. Every threat, every enemy, every storm, and every famine tested Egypt's resilience. Survival was never guaranteed. As Egypt grew stronger, so did the ambitions of its neighbors. The Hyksos, a mysterious people from the Levant, were perhaps the most devastating early invaders. They brought advanced military technology, chariots, bronze weapons, composite bows, tools that the Egyptians had yet to master. For decades, northern Egypt fell under their rule. Temples were desecrated, farms were seized, pharaohs became exiles in their own land. But the Egyptians adapted. They learned to fight on the battlefield with strategy rather than brute force alone. Chariots were incorporated into their armies, bows were improved, and disciplined formations became essential. This adaptability defined Egypt's survival. It was no longer enough to rely on the Nile, the gods, or sheer manpower. Military innovation became critical. To the west, Libyan tribes constantly tested Egypt's borders. These desert warriors were nomadic, unpredictable, and skilled in raiding. Egyptian forces responded by building fortresses and border outposts, constructing garrisons along the western desert to monitor and repel incursions. In the north, the Mediterranean Sea offered both opportunity and danger. Pirates and seafaring raiders threatened the Nile Delta, cutting off trade and supplies. Egyptians developed a modest but capable navy to patrol their waters, controlling the river and coastlines. Even the great Hittite Empire posed a significant challenge. When the new kingdom expanded into Syria and Canaan, the Egyptians encountered Hittite charioteers and heavily fortified cities. Battles were intense, brutal, and indecisive at times, requiring diplomacy alongside force. Treaties and marriages were often used to maintain stability, but the threat always lingered. Egyptian strategy relied heavily on surveillance and intelligence. Spies were sent into foreign lands. Envoys carried messages disguised as gifts, and scouts mapped desert routes. Knowledge of the terrain, weather, and enemy forces often determined victory or defeat before a single arrow was shot. Internal threats were equally dangerous. Rivalries among nobles could spark rebellions. Famine or disease weakened the population, creating openings for conspiracies. A kingdom divided internally could not resist external threats effectively, and history shows that Egypt often teetered on the brink of collapse from internal dissent. The consequences of military failure were severe. Cities could be sacked, temples destroyed, and entire regions subjected to foreign rule. Pharaohs who failed to protect the kingdom risked not only losing their throne, but also their legitimacy before the gods. Divine punishment and political failure were intertwined. Despite these constant threats, Egypt endured. Its secret lay in organization, preparation, and the unshakable belief that the pharaoh embodied Ma'at, cosmic order. Every soldier, priest, and citizen played a role in maintaining that balance. Egypt did not merely react to threats, it anticipated them. Seasonal campaigns, strategic fortifications, alliances with distant powers, and ruthless treatment of rebels and captives all created a system designed for survival. The land itself became a fortress. The deserts, the Nile, and fortified borders acted as natural and artificial barriers. But these defenses could only delay determined enemies, never eliminate danger entirely. Over centuries, Egypt learned that survival required both fear and respect. Enemies could be vanquished, but they would return in new forms. Nomadic tribes, rival empires, pirates, and ambitious generals all could threaten Egypt anew. Yet the civilization endured. Temples rose, monuments were carved, and the pharaohs continued to rule.
Every threat, foreign or domestic, was recorded in hieroglyphs and temple reliefs, immortalizing the victories and warnings for future generations. The lesson was clear. Ancient Egypt survived not because it was invincible, but because it understood the danger was permanent. Preparation, discipline, and belief in divine protection were its weapons. And when the threats finally receded, temporarily, the Egyptians did not forget them. They remembered each invasion, every raid, each enemy that dared challenge the land of the Nile. History became their defense. In the end, ancient Egypt thrived not because of peace, but because it mastered the art of surviving the endless storm of threats. And in that mastery, the civilization forged its enduring legacy. A kingdom built on vigilance, resilience, and the constant presence of danger.